Hey everybody, welcome back to Horology Project. I have in front of you today a very special watch. This is the Rolex Explorer, not the Explorer 1 or the Explorer 2. That's right, just the Rolex Explorer. And this reference is the 114270. So this is the 2 generations back Rolex model. If you didn't know, this watch's claim to fame is that it is considered the Everest watch, and I put that in quotations, and you could probably put it in quotes for a number of reasons. One being whether it was really worn or not when Sir Edmund Hillary was summiting Everest in 1953. Or the other question would be for me, more so, is that this watch really doesn't look anything like the watch that Sir Edmund Hillary wore. His watch looked much more like just a white dialed Oyster Perpetual than this Explorer. But nonetheless, Rolex, being the marketing geniuses they are, branded this watch the Explorer and made it the expedition watch that pays homage to that Everest summit in 1953. Still, regardless of the watch's provenance and its lineage, it's a classic watch, and for very good reasons. This is oftentimes a cult favorite or a fan favorite among watch enthusiasts, and it's simply because it's simple. It's as easy as that. It's a very simple design that is just really tried and true. Like many Rolex sports models out there, it's a very, very classic design. But I think even among the Rolex watches that exist within their sports model, this one seems to be one of the most elegant designs. In fact, I like hobby making Lego cars, and I brought one of my favorites out here, the Porsche 911, and this is the 1960s version. And anyways, I thought it would be kind of cool to put that out here because I kind of look at this Explorer similar to how I look at this 1960s Porsche design, and that is it's just classic, it's timeless, it's restrained, it's simple. It doesn't have a lot going on, but it has everything that you want. And for that reason, this watch has often been hailed the best go anywhere, do anything watch out there. However, my example is pretty cool because this particular version is a Z serial. And if you know anything about Z serials, then what you would know is that around that time period, 2007, 2008, Rolex started to engrave their rehaut. So if you didn't know, older versions of Rolex watches do not have their rehauts engraved. But you'll see here that along the rehaut of the watch, just above the dial, you'll see the words Rolex, 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 Rolex repeated. And those line up pretty well with the markers there. And they wrap around all the way to where it shows the serial number right there. So, I actually haven't taken the bracelet off of this one, but formally the serial number would be, I believe, on the 6 o'clock side right here. So if you took off this link, for instance, or if you took off this end link, that is, then you would see the serial number etched. So Rolex opted to write these, the engrave the rehaut and then put the serial number right there. And this was an attempt to help with counterfeiting at the time, which of course by now is really a moot point, but still, nonetheless, it's kind of cool. I think it looks nice. It's subtle enough that it's just one of those little hidden features that pops at you when you turn the watch at the right angle, and just a neat little a little feature that some of these watches have. And it makes this particular model rather rare, especially since even though this is technically a 6-digit reference, it's really in that family of the 5-digit watches. But this model is pretty neat because this one in particular has kind of all of the old vintage things like the design, the sizing, the hollow link bracelet, but yet still has some of those modern things like having a rehaut around the dial and some solid end links, which are always great. So just a little bit about this watch if you don't know the dimensions. It's 36 millimeters across the watch, and it has about a 44 millimeter lug to lug, and the lug width is 20 millimeters. And in about, I think it was 2010 or so, they came out with a new reference of this watch. This watch had always been 36 millimeters, and they bumped up the size to 39 millimeters. Now, that was very, very controversial for a lot of people. Because this 36 millimeter size has always been 36 millimeters for the Rolex Explorer. So I'll go ahead and put it on the wrist and just show you how it wears. Just a wristwatch check. I am wearing a Tudor Black Bay Pro, which I'm absolutely loving. And we'll switch this one out and we'll put on the Explorer. So I'll just keep that right there. And we'll put on this Explorer. So I have roughly 6.5-inch wrists. And as you'll see, this Explorer just fits great. It's such a beautiful timepiece. And a lot of times the reason why people call it the best go anywhere, do anything watch is because it kind of strikes that perfect balance of a sporty looking watch, a classy looking watch. You can dress it up, you can dress it down, you could wear it with a suit, you could wear it with shorts. It just always looks good. And part of that is because it's simple. Now, the simplicity of this watch in some ways is its biggest Achilles heel. You might be asking me why I would think that. Well, because it is so simple that it's easy for this watch in some ways to feel boring after a while. Because all it does is just tell time. No date, no GMT function, no diver bezel, nothing fancy about this watch. No chronograph feature. It just simply tells time. What's powering this watch is the 3130 movement. That's a common movement for Rolex in this time period, and a lot of watches had that movement in Rolex's lineup. Probably the most loved watch in that lineup that shares this same exact 3130 movement is the Rolex Submariner. So it's a great watch and a simple timekeeper, and it does its job well, which is to just tell time, and it runs very accurately and very well, but it really doesn't do anything more than that. So for a lot of people, this watch can be a watch that flies under the radar. That can get boring over time, but still nonetheless always seems to look great, regardless of the situation, time period, whatever you're in. So just what do I think about this watch? I think I've shared a little bit of that already, but my issues with it are well, let me just say this, I guess. There's a lot of positive. I think I've shared a few things that are positive. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's elegant, it looks great all the time. It's the perfect sizing for me and for most people. And I think the only real downside for this watch is I like having a date feature, or I like having a few more features. And since I already have a Speedmaster, which is kind of a simple watch for me, I know that might surprise you since it's a chronograph and there's a lot going on. That has been probably the biggest challenge with this watch. Is sometimes you want something that can do a couple of things, like tell the date or offer a GMT function. And obviously, this watch doesn't do that. But nonetheless, it is a comfortable watch. In fact, this watch is so comfortable. Probably out of all the watches that I've owned, this is probably in the top 2, top 3. For watches that just disappear on your wrist. It's just heavy enough to feel like you're getting what you paid for, but light enough to also feel like, you know what, this does not bother the wrist at all. These watches are just a lot of fun, and I guess to kind of tour you around the watch a little bit more, it has a screw down crown, which gives it about 100 meters of water resistance. It has these applied indices with white gold surrounds and white gold hands. Something interesting about this is the new version that just recently came out is back to 36 millimeters. However, they shortened the length here to 19 millimeters from 20, which looks fine on the watch if you're wearing it on a steel bracelet. It does make it a little bit more challenging if you have a few watches in your collection that are around 20 millimeter. So this, another point about this dial is you'll notice that these numerals, the 3, 6, and 9, really help you tell the time well, but also just kind of a downside, something to knock this one about, is they're not loomed, those numerals, and they corrected that in the iterations that would follow this watch, specifically the 214270 Mark II, and then onward to the new iteration that we just recently saw where they loom those numerals. The loom on this watch is Super Luminova, and it's okay and kind of indicative of its time. Super Luminova is fine as far as a loom, but the plots are rather small, and so it doesn't always feel like it's that easy to read in the dark, for me at least. But you know, for the most part, I don't have trouble with that. This particular version has solid end lengths right here, which are nice because it kind of keeps the watch at this point really firm and strong. And if you've ever had hollow end links in the past, sometimes they kind of open up with age, and it just look cheap, and you can kind of see through the watch. And that's not the case with this at all. And has hollowed center links, which are these right here. And it gives it a little bit of a chintzy feel, but you really don't, if I didn't say that, for the most part, it's not an issue for most people. It's just a little chintzy and rattly, but hear that? But nonetheless, it's very comfortable on the wrist. Same thing goes with this stamped clasp. Everybody knows that this is a pretty cheap clasp in comparison of some of the modern clasps. I mean, look at this thing. I mean, this is out of a single ingot of steel, and it's just solid. But at the same time too, I've never had this fail or break in its deployment. So, you know, even though it's, you know, quote unquote cheap, it works just fine, and it keeps the watch very, very comfortable. Sometimes that's just a reminder that new can not always be better, and sometimes it's just subjective. Even though it's true to say this is much more substantial, it'd be also true to say that I still find this one more comfortable. So this stamp clasp closes like this, and then you lock it over, and it's pretty sure and true that it won't open again. The older clasps without this piece right here did pop open sometimes for me, but so I really like this little feature right there. But yeah, it's such a beautiful, beautiful timepiece. Love the Rolex Explorer. Quick question for you: do you like this 114270 Explorer, the 36 millimeter kind of neo vintage Explorer, or do you like the newest Explorer more? Which one would you choose if they were both in front of you? All right, well, thank you for watching this video. As always, please feel free to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel, and we'll catch you in the next video.